Was I wrong for completely cutting off my stepfamily, my stepsister and my mother, and revealing the secret that destroyed their claim to a $31 million fortune, all because my late stepfather's dying breath was a venomous confirmation that I wasn't his son? Seriously, I need to know if you would have shown any mercy, because I'm still haunted by the malice in his final words and the incredible, life-altering fallout that ensued. It's a story about a family built on lies, money, and emotional abuse, and how one dying man's petty, vengeful act of disinheritance completely blew up his own meticulously constructed legacy. Tell me if you would have done the same thing, because watching their entire world crumble felt like the only justified response to 2 decades of living a lie. The sheer, breathtaking irony is that his attempt to erase me from his life inadvertently saved me and gave me the clarity I desperately needed to dismantle their entire deceptive structure. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the world I believed was my normal. My name is Julian, and for 20 years, Robert Sterling was my father. He married my mother, Carol, when I was 5, and from that moment on, I was Julian Sterling. Robert was, by all accounts, a successful, self-made man. He had built a real estate empire from the ground up, and by the time I was an adult, his net worth was in the tens of millions, $31 million to be precise. He was obsessed with legacy, with his name, and with controlling everything and everyone around him. His greatest project, aside from his business, was his family. We lived in a stunning, sprawling estate in the most exclusive part of the city, complete with manicured lawns and an indoor pool. To the outside world, we were the picture of success and stability, the perfect high society family. Inside the house, however, things were far more corrosive. Robert ruled with an iron fist wrapped in silk. His expectations were astronomical, not just for me, but for my mother and my stepsister, Chloe. He expected academic perfection, professional success that reflected his status, and absolute obedience. He was emotionally distant, never offering a compliment, only critique, which he often disguised as tough love. If I brought home an A, he'd ask why it wasn't an A+. If I expressed an interest in art or music, he'd scoff and demand I focus on business or law. My mother, Carol, was completely subservient to him. She tolerated his coldness and his constant criticism, seemingly terrified of jeopardizing the wealth and status he provided. She would often step in, not to defend me, but to gently guide me to meet his demands, always whispering, "Just make him happy, Julian. It's easier that way." My stepsister, Chloe, was Robert's biological daughter from his previous marriage, and while Robert was slightly less harsh with her, she quickly adopted his disdainful attitude toward me. She was 2 years older than me and always treated me like a lesser, tolerated presence in the house, a shadow clinging to the Sterling name. Her arrogance was fueled entirely by her status as Robert's true blood relative, the rightful heir to the Sterling throne. My relationship with Robert was always a painful, frustrating charade. I spent my entire adolescence striving for his approval, thinking that if I just worked harder, if I just achieved something spectacular enough, he would finally look at me with pride. I excelled in college, not in the fields he chose, but in computer science, a subject where my success couldn't be traced back to his influence. I even launched a small, successful tech consultancy right out of school. I thought this professional independence would finally earn his respect. It didn't. He dismissed it as playing with apps, and insisted I should sell the company to work for him. The emotional abuse intensified the closer I got to true independence. He started making veiled comments about my competence, my lineage, and my lack of true Sterling drive. I remember one particularly nasty argument where he sneered, "You'll never measure up, Julian, never. You don't have the fire, you don't have the grit. You don't have what it takes to be a asterisk real asterisk." Sterling. The comments always felt personal, going beyond mere professional critique, but I never understood the deep, visceral hatred behind them until the very end. The drama reached its breaking point when Robert was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. His decline was rapid. The final 2 months were spent in a lavish, private hospital suite. This period became a nasty, extended power play over the inheritance. Chloe and my mother were constantly at his side, not out of love, but out of a palpable, sickening anxiety over the will. I visited too, out of a sense of duty, hoping that in his final days, some small flicker of genuine human warmth or regret might surface. It did not. The lawyers were called in several times. Robert, obsessed with control even in death, was constantly tweaking the trust documents. Chloe became increasingly smug, dropping hints about her primary inheritance status, and referring to me as the satellite kid. I ignored it, focusing on the fact that regardless of the money, I still carried the Sterling name, which, I foolishly thought, meant I was still his son in the eyes of the law and the public. I assumed Robert would split the estate in 3 ways, or maybe a slightly larger share for Chloe, but surely I, the son he raised for 2 decades, would receive something substantial to solidify my place in the family's legacy. On the day he died, the air in the suite was thick with a mixture of stale air, the stench of sterile cleaning fluid, and a predatory silence. Chloe and my mother were watching his every shallow breath. I was standing near the window, watching the sun set over the city Robert had conquered. As the nurse checked his vitals and confirmed what we all knew, a strange energy filled the room. Then Robert, with a final, rattling effort, opened his eyes, fixed his gaze directly on me, and pulled me close with a surprising burst of strength. His last words, whispered so only I could hear them, were not an apology, not a declaration of love, but a final, bitter condemnation. He clenched my arm, his eyes full of absolute venom, and hissed, "You get nothing, you little bastard, nothing. You were never my son, and your mother knows it." Then he fell back, and his life officially ended. The shock was immediate and physical. Those words, asterisk, "You were never my son," asterisk, didn't just wound me. They sliced through 20 years of lies and pretense. My entire identity, the name I carried, the life I lived, the emotional abuse I endured trying to earn the love of a father who wasn't even my father. It was all a sham, a colossal, cruel joke. Before I could process the words, my mother, who had clearly overheard the whisper, rushed to me, her eyes wide with panic and fear, not for my feelings, but for the secret being revealed. She grabbed my arm, practically dragging me into the hallway, her face white with terror. "Julian, you mustn't tell anyone, you promised. You promised to keep it quiet," she hissed. "Keep what quiet, Carol?" I asked, using her first name, the last vestige of filial respect dissolving in my mouth. She broke down, sobbing, confessing that my biological father was an artist she had a brief fling with before meeting Robert. Robert knew, she admitted, but he adopted me for appearances, and demanded she never tell me or anyone else. My whole life was a carefully orchestrated lie designed to protect Robert Sterling's perfect image and my mother's wealthy lifestyle. They had kept the secret to the grave, or almost to the grave, and Robert's last act was to use that secret to inflict maximum emotional pain and ensure my complete disinheritance. So that's the brutal truth I faced. My life was built on a lie, and my father used his death to deliver a final, fatal blow of personal rejection. Before I tell you what decision I made, the choice that destroyed the sterling legacy. I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have kept the secret to spare your mother and maintained the pretense for some sense of peace? Or would you have unleashed the truth on Chloe and the rest of the world, knowing it would shatter their expectations and your own identity? I walked back into that sterile hospital room with a chilling clarity. The moment Robert's words confirmed my worst suspicions, the need for his approval vanished, replaced by a cold, unstoppable fury. I wasn't just disinherited. I was discarded and mocked by the man who stole 2 decades of my life. The will reading was scheduled for the next week. Mr. Davies, the family attorney, gathered us in Robert's home office. My mother was fidgeting nervously. Chloe, sitting straight, backed in her chair, wore a smug, entitled smirk. She had already received the preliminary notification of the distribution. The lawyer started reading the complex trust documents. Everything, the properties, the businesses, the stocks, the $31 million consolidated fortune, was meticulously detailed. He finally arrived at the distribution section. To my beloved daughter, Chloe Sterling, I bequeath 90% of my liquid assets and the entirety of my real estate holdings, totaling approximately $28 million. The reading droned on, detailing gifts to charities and a small allowance to my mother, contingent on her keeping the estate's affairs private. Then came my name, and to Julian Hayes, formerly known as Julian Sterling, I bequeath the sum of $1 as a final gesture of my long-held regret that he carried my name for so long. The room fell into absolute silence. My mother gasped. Chloe's smirk widened into a triumphant grin. She finally had her undeniable proof of superiority, the definitive financial confirmation that she was the true heir and I was the outsider. It was cruel, petty, and undeniably Robert. The lawyer paused, looking slightly uncomfortable. That was my moment. I stood up slowly, calmly, and before the lawyer could continue, I looked directly at Chloe, whose eyes were shining with victory. "You can stop smiling, Chloe," I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the silence like glass. "And you can put the champagne on ice, Mom, because you both have a massive problem." I turned to Mr. Davies, the lawyer. "Mr. Davies, I believe there's a serious factual error in the documents. Robert was very specific about ensuring his legacy went to his son and daughter. But I'm not the only one here who isn't his biological child." I looked pointedly at Chloe. Robert's dying words to me, which my mother here can confirm, were that I was never his son. But did he ever confirm that Chloe was his daughter? Or did he just assume? My mother let out a small, terrified sound. Chloe's face instantly drained of all color, her triumphant smirk replaced by a look of sheer, panicked confusion. I had hit the core of Robert's legacy obsession. He was so fixated on disinheriting me that he never considered his daughter might also be a product of the very same infidelities he hated. I then produced a small, certified lab envelope I had discreetly acquired months prior, well before Robert's death, when my suspicion over the years of abuse reached a peak. It was a DNA test result, using hair samples I'd collected from Robert and Chloe from shared items. I placed the paper on the table. I took the liberty of checking. Robert was so obsessed with blood, he forgot to check his own. Chloe is not his biological daughter. She is the result of my mother's affair. No, wait, not my mother. She's the result of his first wife's affair. I paused, letting the statement sink in. The room was absolutely electric. The lawyer's eyes were wide as saucers. My mother was openly weeping, and Chloe was shaking, completely speechless, her entire foundation of identity crumbling. I hadn't just revealed a secret. I had exposed the final, fatal lie at the heart of the Sterling dynasty. Mr. Davies, the lawyer, immediately took control, calling a recess and sequestering Chloe and my mother. The fallout was explosive. Robert's will was based entirely on the presumption of a father-child relationship, explicitly favoring his bloodline, with proof that neither of his surviving children were his biological descendants. The will became instantly contested and potentially void. The entire $31 million estate was immediately frozen, pending a massive legal battle that would inevitably expose every dirty secret the Sterlings had tried to hide. The consequences were swift and total. Chloe, realizing her inheritance was not only contested, but possibly lost entirely, turned on my mother, accusing her of knowing and covering up the truth for years. My mother, desperate to salvage something, tried to throw me under the bus, claiming I fabricated the evidence. But the DNA test was certified. I had the truth, and I had the power. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain, my peace and my true identity. I changed my name officially, discarding the Sterling moniker like a poisonous cloak, reverting to the name I should have had, Julian Hayes. I provided the evidence to the legal team not for money. I didn't want any of his tainted fortune, but to ensure the estate was resolved cleanly, likely reverting to some distant, unknown collateral relative or, failing that, major charitable foundations, anywhere but in the hands of the people who had hurt me. I blocked my mother and Chloe on every platform. I watched from a distance as the Sterling name, once synonymous with elite wealth, became a tabloid scandal about infidelity, lies, and a disinherited adopted son who exposed a decade-old secret. The moral I took away from the whole horrific mess is that when someone tries to cut you out of their life with malice, they are often holding the scissors on their own trap. Robert's desperate need for control and his final venomous act gave me the key, the truth, to unlock my own freedom and destroy his false legacy. I may not have inherited a cent of his $31 million, but I inherited something infinitely more valuable, my real self, my true name, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing I chose honesty over a lucrative lie. So, tell me, was I wrong to use Robert's cruel dying words as the weapon to expose the truth about Chloe, effectively freezing the $31 million fortune and destroying the Sterling name? Was my revenge justified, or should I have just taken my $1 and walked away quietly? Let me know your final, honest thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you were on my side, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.